As soon as I was building a business, I'm like, what is textbook perfect from a economics perspective, like for a SaaS growing company? What are the right growth rates? What should be my EBITDA? We have to build our business financials in the right way. And guess what women do? We run from the financials. And then we say, oh, well, you can hire somebody to do that. That's not my zone of genius. This is the propaganda that I'm tired of, like women being fed. Zone of genius or not, the buck stops at you. So yes, you can say, I don't love to do this. It's not my zone of genius, but you are still responsible for it.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we have conversations about power, value, and success on your own terms. I'm talking with women who are building influence, wealth, and authority, not by following someone else's playbook, but by deciding what success looks like for themselves. These are candid conversations, hard-earned perspectives, and no BS insight from women who aren't asking permission. They're setting the standard. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice. Most people call me JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, as our guest, we have Suneera Madhani. She is the founder of Stax Payments. May have heard of it. Big exit, unicorn. And now Worth AI, which is her new venture. And we're going to hear all about it today. Hi, Suneera. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. I know we were talking before we started recording. We have a lot in common and how we see the vision of women in business and entrepreneurship in the future. And I really want to get into it because I read on your LinkedIn that you're one of 27 female unicorn founders. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. I'm hoping that the number has increased. So this was posted during my exit in 2021. And I think there's been some additions to the crew, which is really awesome and exciting. But yes, I'm one of 27 female founders that have started and scaled and sold a business north of $1 billion. So from zero to the billion, it's a really small number. And I'm proud to be in that group.
I'm so honored to have you here because this is going to be a fascinating conversation because there's so few of you. And I think that's what people don't really realize. It's like we hear it's like, oh, well, so-and-so built this company and so-and-so built this company, but on the backs of what? Like, did you have privilege? Did you have money? Did you have a male co-founder? Any of that stuff. And you have none of it. So let's get into it.
I do have a male co-founder, so I'm not going to discount the male co-founder, but it didn't take away from all my hard work. And we didn't have any connections. My male co-founder is my brother. We did not grow up. I think privilege is also I do feel very privileged. So I'm not going to say that I'm not privileged. I grew up in a very loving household, but we're an immigrant family. And so from a financial perspective, not a lot of privilege there, not a lot of connections. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to CEO school. I didn't know how to build technology. And I had this idea to go start my first fintech, and fintech wasn't even a term. I got the company off the ground, and my brother and I have worked together our entire lives because our parents are small business owners. And so I grew up working since I was like, I can't remember not being at work with my parents. And not in like a weird child labor kind of way, but that's just because it was like they had no support. And this was like they were running small businesses and we had to kind of go.
What were the businesses?
Convenience stores. And so my parents, they started with one convenience store. This was, in the 1980s or right after I was born. They bought their first business because entrepreneurship was the only way to the American dream. They weren't educated. They came to America separately. Met in Chicago, which is a super beautiful love story of my parents. And I was born in Chicago, but they were like 19 and 20 years old. Like they were really babies in the 80s. And my parents weren't educated. They were first in their family. They were both firstborn. And so they had an opportunity to come to America and to go build their lives. And for my mom, I come from a really strong line of women is where my backstory comes from. My maternal grandmother was an English teacher in Karachi, Pakistan. So she was educated. She was just huge on women's education. And I think I get all of that energy from my maternal grandmother. And she came to America. She has 5 children and she got her visa and she got 2 additional visas. And she ended up choosing her 2 eldest daughters, left her husband and 3 kids in Karachi to say, I'm going to go, we're going to figure this out. And then we're going to bring all of you to the United States because my girls will have a future. Like they won't have a future here. And careers for women in Karachi were either in nursing, or even if you were educated, you really didn't make it was, it was a teacher or a nurse in certain positions like that. But she was like, I want more for my daughters. And so she came to America with that dream and that vision. And I'm like so extremely grateful for her sacrifices. And then my mom, and just their story is just unbelievable. And my father's is no short. So similar. And like he was firstborn son, came to America to honestly work and send money back home. And so this was their like way for him to support his family as the eldest son. But I'm so grateful my parents met. And then I'm a byproduct of their love and my brother. And they bought their first business, saved up all their money to buy a convenience store in Dallas, Texas. And we moved to Dallas. My brother was born in Dallas. And from that one convenience store, they turned it into two. And then they added a pizza restaurant next to it and a franchise. And that grew into this small business. I would like to call it their mini empire, but we were really comfortable growing up, but we all worked as well. So it wasn't this like huge lap of luxury, but it was really, I feel so grateful. I feel like I got my MBA at such an early age. And that's really where a lot of our values and my work ethic and everything comes from. But I was the first person in my family to graduate college. I did not want to become an entrepreneur because that wasn't the path it was supposed to be. Go get, I could be anything I want to be. And so I went to school and then ended up, again, like then choosing entrepreneurship or choosing business degree, and started my first company at the age of 25. And I've been working my whole life.
Weren't you working somewhere and living in Orlando at the time and went to your boss and said, we should do this? Where were you working at the time?
Yeah, I was in Orlando. So I went to University of Florida. I got a degree in finance and business. I went to go work for corporate America. I had a 4-year stint working in 2 different financial services companies. And both of them, somehow I ended up in the merchant division. So I was supporting small business tools. Merchant processing, which is credit card processing, was kind of like the lane. I didn't choose it. It was in the financial services realm. It kind of had to do with my degree. I ended up working for a financial services company. That was a division I worked for. And because I knew small businesses my whole life, the customer that they were serving was small business, but they did not understand small business. They actually didn't understand how small businesses, like it truly is, we call mom and pop. Like it truly was my mom and pop. They wanted the technology. They didn't know how to adopt technology. They were really savvy about actually making money, but the tools and services were really commoditized and no one was actually listening to their pain points. And we had people that were solving it that never actually ran a small business before. And so my idea for Stax, the unicorn that I ended up building, was a simple, why are all the fees? It's just so confusing. Like there was like so many percentages as a business owner to pay for credit cards. As a consumer, you don't really think about it when you're charging the transaction, but the small business ends up paying that 3.5% right off of that's their margin. So if they have a 10% margin business, 3.5% of it, 35% of their margin just went into credit card processing fees. So it's a really heavy expense. And when I learned about who controls the cost, and Visa, MasterCard, clearly there's there's major card brands and they have a network and it's all transparent. So why isn't anybody doing more with this? And then there's so much data in the transactions. This is where the finance nerd in me, I'm like, we can actually help them grow if we tell them what are the best times, or, how to actually catch up on these invoices, or we have so much data to support their growth versus just charging them the fees. And I wanted to launch for my company, not for myself, the first subscription-based credit card processing platform where it was unlimited processing, or we can, up to a threshold, but pretty it's transparent and simple. And they paid flat fee like a software. So SaaS was, I feel like for anyone who's young and new and listening, they're like, this doesn't make any sense. But just 15 years ago, SaaS was just literally booming across different industries. And in financial services, SaaS wasn't there. And so to truly create software, an invoicing platform that can help small businesses truly grow their business while having transparency in fees. It was 30-40% in fees that we were saving these small businesses. I went with this idea. I pitched it to my mill bosses and I got laughed out of the room. Not that there's an excuse for it, but I was 25 years old. I didn't have much experience. I came in what I felt was like the best presentation of my life. I had thought through everything on how the company can implement it, how we're going to actually go to market with this, how this is going to actually help grow our market share. And they looked at me to say, like, this is just not how it's done. Like,
oh my God,
why would we be transparent? We're competing directly with the banks. This is how the banks do it. Why would we change it? And then why would we invest in software and technology? Let that be the software and tech guys in Silicon Valley. And like, we don't need to invest in technology, right? It's like now saying with AI, it's saying, no, let the AI companies build AI, but we don't need it as part of our infrastructure and whatever we're selling to a small business. Like, that's not going to be sustainable over time. So this was that new SaaS era. And so I rejected. I fly home. That company was based out of Houston, was the headquarters. I fly back to Orlando. We're having family dinner. And I'm telling my parents and my family, my brother was there, and like just about like, they're like, how was the week? And I'm like, breaking down, crying, like the worst presentation. I'm like, 25 and like really trying in my career and like really put so much effort into this. And my dad goes, well, Sonny, it's my nickname. He's like, why don't you go start the company? And I'm like, Dad, where do I go find Mr. Visa? Like, how do I go start a payments company? He's like, well, your boss has figured it out, so you can figure it out too. And it was the first time that I'd ever even thought to say, okay, maybe we can give this a shot. And he's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're young, you're going to fail. And then you can go back and get another job, but you can't go back and work for these guys because they don't believe in you. And that was the truth, right? And that was the truth. And my privilege, and this is what I do feel I did have privilege. I always had a safety. Like at the end of the day, like that to me is privilege, that even though it wasn't a money safety in that way, I could quit my job and I moved back home. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to give it 6 months. And if not, I'm going to go get my MBA. And that was the path for young Sunny at 25. Luckily, this story went differently and it was successful and the market loved it. And I busted my ass for the last, 15 years, but 10 years in building that company, putting one foot in front of the other. We scaled that business from 0 to 40 billion in payments on our platform. And it was
10 years?
In 10 years. Yeah. So 10 years, we did all of the rounds of funding. Like we were scaling. I didn't know anything about venture capital besides what I read in my like finance classes. As our business was growing, we needed to really scale through funding. And I had to raise our seed and series A, B, C, D. Like I've gone all the way from 0 to the D. Ended up selling to private equity in 2020 for a majority recap, and then recapitalized the business again, which just means that I ended up doing another transaction and staying on. And then that was at the 1.1 billion. So it was quite the ride. And I tell everyone, I didn't go to CEO school. We had to do all of the things. And yes, my co-founder was my brother, and it was an incredible ride to go build with him. We're doing it again.
I mean, first of all, the fact that you put it together, you put this presentation together and you went to present it to your bosses. I mean, when ignorance is bliss, right? It's like, go do it, just follow to be wise. So I love that you decided that you were going to do this. And this was really worth it. You must have worked very hard to get that. And at that point, what did you understand about your leverage or power and success in the working environment, being a first generation, going to college, et cetera?
I think that the thing that I learned was that no one's going to do it for you. And so there's nobody that's going to come save you. There's no one that's going to do it for you. There isn't a course you can take or a thing that you can go join or a class that you can do, or even the mentor and the peer groups that I had. Like no one can do it for you. You have to be willing to put the work in yourself. And that level of work, it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of sacrifice. Like it's amazing to be on this other side and to be able to tell that story. But the odds of actually making it through are 0.000000001%, because there are so many times that it should have failed and it was failing, and you still have to find a way to keep going and keeping the lights on. It's not easy mentally, physically, emotionally, and it really does take a toll on you. So for the last 15 years, all I've done is really work and somehow sustain to build a life, which that on top of it, that's actually my prize. Like the thing that I'm most proud of is I had babies along the way and I did my best, like, although I was dying the entire time. So I'd make that like clear to all women. Like I was just beyond trying to like have my like babies. So I had Mila. Mila's turning 10 now. So she came after the start of the company. We tried conceiving and ended up having Anna in 2019. So a couple years later. So I had my second daughter, and just the sheer, like, that's the hardest job too, is like raising children and being a wife and being a daughter and a friend. And like life itself was also really, not that it wasn't being sacrificed, but it was equally as important to me. And I didn't see a lot of examples of women truly having it all. And I was hell bent that I was going to have it all. And so I'm not saying that it's not hard to have it all, but whatever all looks like to you. And if there's like, this is a femme podcast, so I know she's listening, like, don't let other people tell you and define what your all needs to be. Define it for yourself. But it comes with sacrifice and it comes with trade-offs. But man, that part was really hard too.
Well, I mean, ultimately though, look, you might be sacrificing all of these things, right? That for a while, right? But what if you would have stayed there? What were you sacrificing? That's the alternative, right? It's like, that's working in that patriarchal system is impossible for women who really want to own their own power and success. It's become impossible, right? So it's like, isn't it worth it at the end?
It's 10 times over worth it, right? Like it's worth it. And I definitely give the advice, like I was also in my 20s, which was prime time to do it, right? Like your energy level is just different. Your naivete works in your favor because there's things now that I'm like in second part of building that I'm like, I had the balls to go do some of this stuff. Not that I wasn't overthinking or not that I wasn't, but your confidence level, because you're also just, you don't know what you don't know. That actually works in your favor when you're building at a young age, because you're like, why wouldn't I be able to get that meeting? And why wouldn't I be like, there's less friction in your ability to go, I think, than it is a little bit later. And so I do think that I had that time was, what did I sacrifice? Hanging out with my friends? What did I sacrifice? Like things that, like, I didn't sacrifice my family. Was it hard to go do at the same time? But I'm really grateful that, and I know women that have had to sacrifice that haven't been able to prioritize dating or haven't been able to prioritize creating a family and haven't been able to prioritize taking care of their health. And, if they want to have a family and like trying to in conceiving a family. And so I think that what I'm most grateful for, the thing that I'm so happy that I didn't sacrifice. And although it came at all of the, like, I was dead, but that is what I'm most grateful for. Because if I had been here on this side with all the money, the success, every accolade, and I didn't have my kids and my love and my family that I have, that wouldn't have been worth it.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's no right time. I had my kids on my own. So I'm a single mom by choice. Right. And it's like, I know things that will take me longer because I don't have that safety net. Like my family was not entrepreneurs, quite the opposite. So, it's different. Like, and you make these choices, but these choices are important. So you have power and agency over yourself. And the choices that you're making are yours. You're not building somebody else's company. So I really love your story, Let's go back a little bit though to, like, as we all know, all the dismal percentages on venture capital. Like, you started Stax Payment right around the time they were actually collecting this data to have these statistics. And I think the most it ever went up to was 4% of women that they have given money to. Like, going through these, were you in these meetings with your brother?
Yes and no, right? My brother and I are two minority founders. Okay. So not just as a woman, raising venture capital at the max was at 4%. The amount of venture capital that's ever been given to minorities is less than 1%. Whether or not raising venture capital is no easy task. And so I don't want to, I'm not discounted because I did have a male co-founder with me. Now, although women founded startups that do have male co-founders tend to be funded better than all women's teams. So there are stats like in regards to that. And yes, we fundraised, like we were co-founders of the company. And I can tell you clearly, like the biases are there, the questions that they ask him versus the questions they ask me. We also had a technical co-founder in the business, and he's also with the same founding team. We're building our second fintech right now. But Jacques and I have had children along the same, like me and Yvonne, his wife, have been pregnant kind of at the same time as we're going through it. But no one knows that he's also about to become a new dad versus you can clearly see that I'm going to become a new mom. And so even the questions that are pointed, and we're just automatically discounted. And you're discounted for so many reasons. So we could probably spend an entire hour talking about fundraising strategies and what worked, what didn't, what are how I ended up getting the capital. But I will say that we did get it done. And the reason that we got it done was because we built a successful company. Regardless of who was running the company, investors, what they want is their return on investment. And so if we're not getting let's take a chance on these founders, that's not happening, right? But the business KPIs and our financials, if they can speak for themselves to say, hey, $1 in yields you $3 out because our company is scaling at this level. Here is our CAC to acquire a customer, and here's a lifetime value. So we know that we're, at a 7x LTV right here on CAC to LTV. We are literally, it's a sure bet from a financial standpoint. Your chances of not only making money are going to, it's going to be there. And in an industry also, I think as women, we're, yes, less than 4%, 2%, all the numbers. But if you actually take a look at the number of female founded tech companies, SaaS companies are also so little. We're actually not building and starting companies that are venture backable, right? So most of the investments are going into not every company, whether I had the most perfect business or not. My company was a SaaS tech company, which is venture backable. Now, beauty brands and other companies are venture backable once they kind of achieve scale. And then they look for venture investment to scale, they've already gotten traction, proof of market, proof of concept, and they're growing and scaling and they need dollars to further accelerate growth. But we also have to look at industries that we're just not participating in as women. And so I think that one, for anyone that's looking to raise venture capital or just capital in general, I never went to an investor with my back against the wall. So whether I got their money or not, I was going to be successful because my company was every dollar in, I was able to prove every dollar out. And so I was really focused on building a successful business without anyone's support. And so my unit economics, my business financials were really solid. And what I was able to do was not just storytell, but to back my story with the right financial metrics to say, this is such an incredible opportunity. And also you have to build relationships. And so there's not one investor that came in that I had a cold pitch for. I was rejected every cold pitch, every cold email. Not one of them has ever panned out for me. Maybe I've landed a meeting or a phone call, but I've never actually gotten a real investor out of from the wild. Every person that's ever sat on my cap table, I've had a personal relationship because I met them through a friend or at a conference, getting out of my screen, networking, really building relationships.
Everything you're saying is so amazing. Not to cut you off, but it's we have this whole idea here in the eye, have this whole filter that who you're asking is one of the most important things. First of all, let's ask, okay? You've already proven that you were done. You were going to ask of yourself, to push yourself to do the most, right? You've proven that to us and everyone in the world and yourself and your family. But it's not just that you ask somebody, right? It's who you're asking. Look back to the company where you were asking the wrong people. You were never getting anywhere in that company, right? And what's the definition of crazy? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? It's you just hit the nail on the head. It's you said no cold intro because they were going to automatically preconceive you and your brother and your co-founder as minority women. What do they know? And here you go. Now you're going to be okay, I really want to get to know somebody. You're asking the right people. And that's just so important. I mean, I love that lesson here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, this was the truth. This is how we did it. It was relationship building and then always having strong, the business was strong. I will literally go back and say, I've always been a really good student because that was something that, and I think as women, we are I'm a checklist. I'm a Virgo, super type A checklist gal. I want an A plus. That is how I operate in my life. And as soon as I was building a business, I'm what is textbook perfect from a economics perspective, like for a SaaS growing company, what are the right growth rates? What should be my EBITDA? We have to build our business financials in the right way. And guess what women do? We run from the financials. And then we say, oh, well, you can hire somebody to do that. That's not my zone of genius. This is the propaganda that I'm tired of, like women being fed. Zone of genius or not, the buck stops at you. So you can say, I don't love to do this. It's not my zone of genius, but you are still responsible for it. And the better that you get at it, the better your company gets at it. So then that creates the result that you're trying to drive. So the answer isn't, it's not my zone of genius. And so we really do have to, level up as women in the world of business. We have to level up. And a huge shift for me, and I speak about this constantly, is going from founder to CEO. And that is something that I think that women were stuck in. And founder mode is amazing. It's passion. It's why we're so successful in our why, the impact that we're having, the culture that we create, the people that we hire. Our products are amazing because that's the founder hat. But the CEO hat is for scale. The CEO hat is the emotion aside, and what do the numbers say? What do we have to do more of? And what do we have to do less of? What do we have to cut so that we can drive the investment in the right areas of the business? And what is actually moving the needle? And it comes down to 3 basic principles that I always share: people, process, and profit. Those are the 3 areas of scale that are super critical for you as a CEO to tap into. And I think for me, like when I shifted into okay, I know when I need to be in founder mode and I have to step into my CEO shoes, is really when I started to look at the company and more confidence in myself to say, I've got to be able to step in, ask the right questions, lead the team in this way. And everyone can do it. I just think that you have to make that decision and that mindset shift to say, I'm going to step into her, because that is what's important for the business.
And often get help, right? Like get a coach, like have somebody walk along, the way with you. And I think that's such an important point. Not every founder is meant to be the CEO, right? You can hire other people, but you have to know what's going on in the business as a basic fundamental. And the same goes for couples when it's like, oh, well, I'm doing so much with the house and the kids, and they might be a total boss lady and have a massive job with a C-suite title, but then they give all of that power to the husband when it comes to, finances. And to that, it's like, okay, I get it. And you can split that up, right? But I guarantee you, your husband knows where your kids go to school, what they do after school. You know what I mean? They know where you live. They know which houses you have and what furniture is coming in and out and who the name of your nanny or your housekeeper. They know that stuff. So you have to know enough too. You need to know if, you have life insurance policies, what other kind of financing vehicles you have. Where, is there a will? Where is everything? All of their trust. You have to know all that stuff. You don't have to manage the day-to-day of it, but you have to know it. And we're doing ourselves such a disservice by being like, finance is icky. It's like, you have to understand the basics.
And you know what? You actually said something that I hear often from women too, is like, well, I'm going to hire a CEO. I don't have to be the CEO. Now, I'm not saying that that's not true, but that's a place in when your company has enough revenue to do that.
Yeah.
I eventually exited the company. I needed to bring in someone that wasn't me. We ended up hiring for an awesome president who then became CEO of the company. But this was year 10, and it could have happened sooner, right? You can have people like a director of operations, a director of finance. You need to build your team. But in order for you to build your team and for you to actually act as the visionary, get back into founder mode, is by being in CEO mode to make money to scale.
So train yourself. Yeah. I mean, I can eat my words on that one. I'm fine. I want you to talk about worth and tell me what that is, because now you're solving another problem, right? For small businesses.
I'm always going to be solving problems. I'm a byproduct of this super, this is the immigrant kid in me that it's I don't know, we're not done. Building the business credit score. It's so exciting. It's such a big task. We onboarded 40,000 small businesses at Stax, and onboarding a small business was very determined on humans. I'll give an example. On your phone right now, you can sign up for an Apple credit card, walk over to Starbucks, and by the time that this podcast is over, you're taking a transaction in 3 minutes, right? But that's because it's on Jennifer Justice herself and your personal credit score and your personal finances. Now, do it under Talking Lady Business Podcast LLC, Jennifer Justice as the owner of the company. It stops you. You can't actually get a credit card underneath that or open up a banking account, whatever the financial tool, product that you need stops because there's no standardization of credit worth. Onboarding process is completely broken. It's so much friction in the financial services sector. And again, we understand small business. It's what I've known my whole life. And guess what? I built a $40 billion financial services company. So I understand the institutions now. And although we wanted to onboard that customer so quickly, we couldn't because we needed the tax returns. We wanted to make sure that Jennifer is who she says she is. She's not going to do fraud. There's liability. And so we had to go through our own checks as a financial institution to onboard Jennifer. So it's just a compliance thing of why there's friction. That can be solved with data. That can be solved with instant access. And there's like so much technology that can solve that because we've been able to do it for consumers. We should be able to do it for small business now. And so worth comes from credit worth is where it comes from. So that's Worth AI. And we've built an incredible platform that is serving institutions. So it's not for small businesses, but we're serving the largest banks, and American Express is one of our customers, one of our investors. Now, second time around, fundraising, it's completely different. Not that it was easy, but I mean, it definitely, like, when you have credibility, you've already deployed hundreds of millions of dollars for your investors. You have investors in line now saying, I want to invest. So this time around, the rejection was coming on my end to say no to those investors of who actually I want on my cap table. So very different story building again, but we're solving a really big problem. We're really excited to partner and work with some of the largest financial institutions. It's enterprise tech, it's heavy stuff, but it really is going to change the game for small business.
My business accountant, who's been my accountant personally, I started the companies, and he was like, oh, you can just put everything on your own credit card under your name. The worst advice ever, right? Then my bank, because I'm at Chase, they were like, why don't you have a credit card under the justice firm? And I have lady business. So taking care of lady business is lady business. And then I have the justice firm because I'm a lawyer as well. And I have that company. They can't, that one's my media. And they were like, well, now it's going to be hard for you to credit card. You've been around for like 5 years. And I was like, wait, what? And I like saying these stories because I made this mistake. Okay. People think I have it all together. No, I don't. There's nobody giving me this. Well, I had people giving me advice and they gave me the wrong advice. I have finally now started to remedy it all, but it's not easy. And, I have a company that makes money and all. It's like, why is everything banking on my personal credit versus my business credit? So this is a massive, massive opportunity for everybody and to really understand it. So I just love everything that you're doing.
Thank you. It's a big mission and we love solving really big problems. And that's another problem because once I thought I was going to go sell a company at this level, I should be able to retire and go on vacation whenever I want and, have matcha at 11 a.m. with my friends. But there are lots of bigger fish to fry and problems to solve. So your girl's back at it.
I don't think that you would want to do that. You don't.
I would. To me, I will say we have to do an entire episode on what I feel about feminine versus masculine. I feel like I've now figured out that in business, I used to be like, I want to be in my feminine in business. And there's parts of me that are good for that. But I think business can just be done in the masculine and get it done, do the contracts, do the deal.
Yeah, that's how I am in business. Yeah.
And that way I can be in my feminine on a Friday afternoon with my girlfriends or picking up my kids when I want to. So
exactly.
I talk a lot about that on my podcast, CEO Schools. I've had the podcast for 6 years pre the first exit because at that time they were doing a lot of stats around women in business. And I was like, what? Less than 2% of female founders ever break $1 million in revenue. And I'm sitting here talking about venture and all these other gaps. But if we're not building businesses that are even at least $1 million in revenue, no one's even paying attention to us. So that's the first problem we need to solve.
Yes. Getting to that point is so hard, right? And then when women do end up getting the money, it's great when you're giving it to philanthropy, but half these philanthropies would not exist if their ex-husbands didn't have their way of spending their own money and running their companies, right? So we need to reinvest it in women and people of color who's solving real issues like you're solving. And only then can we actually move the needle, right? And getting the people to $1 million in revenue so we can continue to grow this ecosystem that works for all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I loved it. I love all things business, talking about business, talking to women in business and saying it straight. So you're not going to get the fluff on my side.
I wanted to ask 2 more questions. So when did you realize the power that you had?
That's a really tough question. I think I'm still figuring that out. And that's the honest answer. Because I think that the definition of that changes. for me as I evolve and grow too. Because maybe what mattered to me, like I think in my early 20s, and maybe power was like, getting through the fundraise and getting a couple of the accolades. And it was it was on my like mission and vision to like become entrepreneur of the year and seek validation, but it came externally versus intrinsically. And so when I achieved all those things, so I did get the EY Entrepreneur of the Year, and that was like my Oscars of like, that was like the company that I admired the most for all of like, I've done all the things, the Fortune's under 40 and the 30 under, all of this stuff. But I feel like that to me, if you would have asked me in my 20s, it was like those kinds of milestones. But that's not really where I think the real power is. And that's in the maturity and like growing into who I'm becoming. I think where I feel I've gained my most power, I feel most powerful, is that I have the ability now to choose what I get to work on. That's power. That's true power in terms of I'm not financially like needing to take this keynote or to be on this podcast or to work with a client that I don't want to work with or take on an investor because I need the capital. And so to me, I think freedom of choice and being able to choose that is power. And I'm really proud of being here in that moment. And I think a lot of women do. I tend to people please my way through life as well. So I have a really hard time, even when I have the choice to say no. I still find myself saying yes because I don't want to let somebody down, or I feel bad, or I feel like I need to. And so that's a part of me that's like growing and evolving. And I'm learning on, I am allowed to have my boundaries, and this is what's important to me. What does move the needle for me, and being able to choose the things that also add value to me, and that I don't need to be serving everyone because that's what I've like been taught or what society expects.
Yes. And last question, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh my God. So much bad advice. People give you really bad advice. Like, first, don't take everyone's advice. Like, take it for a grain of salt. I think it comes from a good place, but so much bad advice. I would say bad advice is like, one, don't start the company, or like you're never gonna succeed. Like that I got the whole time. Like, this is never gonna work. Well, clearly it worked. Other bad advice is fake it till you make it, right? And then like on that same lens was like, don't share, like it's TMI, like don't share this, don't share that. And I've actually found what's always worked for me is honesty and like true vulnerability and true honesty. And even if I am sitting with an investor or a client or something, and I'm like, hey, I don't have an answer to this, or here are my questions, or here's where maybe we messed up, or just being able to be honest and vulnerable and transparent always actually worked in my favor versus the opposite of like trying to compensate for something that we don't have. And so
authenticity. And it also allows you to see who you're doing business with, right? And like if it's somebody who is going to take that the wrong way and not and think that's a weakness in you, you don't want to be doing business with them anyway. You don't want them to be an investor. They're going to make your life miserable, right? Knowledge is power in that way. Asking those questions to know who you're dealing with is so important. Oh my God, thank you so much. This has been so amazing. I know I have to let you go, although we could probably talk another 4 hours. I'm definitely having you back to talk about masculine and feminine.
Oh my God, anytime.
In the meantime, where do people find you and worse, etc.?
You could find me everywhere on social media. So Suneera Madhani, Suneera Madhani, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I'm really active on both of those channels. You can find me if you loved today's episode. You can find me on mine. I have a weekly show. It comes out every single Wednesday. We've been doing this for 6 years, and we have some really awesome conversations around women and women in business. So you can find the CEO School podcast on every place you find podcasts.
Amazing. And Worth, how do we find that?
When you go to any of my channels, my companies are all linked, and it's worthai.com.
Suneera, thank you so much for being on today. This is so amazing. Such a fan. And to everyone listening to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business, until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Taking Care of Lady Business podcast. When you travel for work or internationally, the real question isn't if something could happen, it's whether you've planned for it. That's why I'm a member of MedJet and have been for years. If your security is threatened or you're hospitalized while traveling, MedJet can get you home and to the hospital you choose, not just the closest one. It's not travel insurance. It's about not leaving critical decisions to chance. If you travel regularly, it's worth having in place. You can learn more at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. If this was useful, subscribe and share with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes for more on my guest and me, Jennifer Justice. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC. See you next time.